This week, tune into the Paul Feinbaum Show as I discuss
the delicious taste of ice cold Dr. Pepper.
Larry Culpepper? Hey, I'm in the middle of a promo.
Sorry, Finey. The fans are craving so much Dr. Pepper, I thought I'd borrow some of your airtime.
Security!
Hey, look, whether you're watching college football or calling into some guy's radio show, Dr. Pepper makes college football that much sweeter. So grab some at your local store today.
Can I have one of yours?
Hey, we got a caller. You're on the Larry Culpepper Show with your host, Larry Culpepper.
That's it.
That's Dr. Pepper, the one fans crave. Available at Walmart.
This is the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
I'm Stephen A.
What's going on, everyone? A good Wednesday afternoon to one and all. Dan Graca sitting in for my man Stephen A. here on ESPN Radio. You know the drill. It's 866-ESPN, 866-729-3776. You want to get me on Twitter? Reach me at Dan Graca. A lot to get to here on a jam-packed Wednesday afternoon. Yankees have themselves a new manager. The Ball family shenanigans continue on out west. Eli Manning is back as the starting quarterback of the New York Football Giants after a 1-week spot on the sidelines, as the Steve Spagnuolo tenure will take full effect starting Sunday against the Dallas Cowboys. And the Knicks are back home tonight against the Memphis Grizzlies, a beat-up and battered Knicks team in a little bit of a situation in their season right now where it could go one of two ways, and we'll get into all that over the course of the program. But we'll start with the Yankee press conference from earlier this afternoon out there in the Bronx at Yankee Stadium. And the new manager of the Yankees, it's now official, Aaron Boone, he met the media. And certainly this is a guy that has experience dealing with the media because, after all, he was one of us for the last several years at ESPN. He did an outstanding job, of course, working his way all the way up to Sunday Night Baseball and calling the World Series on ESPN Radio and on and on and on. So you know that he's going to have that part of the job figured out, right? His dealings with the media, his communication, his ability to deal with the players obviously was a big sticking point and one of the reasons why he got this job and ranked so high on Brian Cashman's checklist of things that he wants from the next manager of the New York Yankees. But let me tell you something right off the bat. All right, and I don't think I'm breaking any secrets here when I say this. After they break from Yankee Stadium, and after they sit down and have a nice lunch, maybe they'll go out and have a nice dinner tonight, maybe some NYY steak, I don't know. A lot of options. But once Aaron Boone wakes up tomorrow morning, guess what? Honeymoon's over. It really is. The honeymoon is over. And look, there's a lot of risk and a lot of reward when you take over the managerial ranks of a team like the New York Yankees. And if your first ever managerial job is for a franchise like the New York Yankees, there's going to be pressure. There's going to be expectations. That's a given. You can write it down. That is an absolute given. And I think that it's even accelerated tenfold because of what the Yankees accomplished a year ago. Remember, this was not a baseball team that went 80-82, and they underachieved last year, and they went through several ruts, and Joe Girardi just couldn't pick this team up and couldn't get them to play winning baseball. None of that happened. This team overachieved last year, defied the expectations, defied the experts, and they came within one game of the World Series, right? One game of knocking off the eventual World Series champion, Houston Astros. By all accounts, that is a hell of a season. By all accounts, the manager, the guy in charge, probably should have been given a 5-year contract extension. But the opposite happened. He was shown the door by Brian Cashman. And I understand that baseball is changing. We know that, right? We know that things are a little bit different. Case in point, look at the two teams that were in the World Series this past year, with the Dodgers, with the Astros. Dave Roberts, A.J. Hinch. The structures of those organizations relying so heavily on the analytics, relying so heavily on sabermetrics, to where the front office and the way the organizations are structured really go a long way towards determining how the team is going to look on the field, even 1 through 9 in the lineup, on a day-in, day-out basis. Not to say that the manager's a puppet, but there's a lot of control looming over his head. And you had rookie managers like Dave Roberts. And not A.J. Hinch. He had a cup of coffee, of course, with the Diamondbacks. But still young managers who maybe don't have a lifetime in the dugout on someone's coaching staff. Aaron Boone, of course, has none. Is it unprecedented? No. Mike Matheny was never a big league manager before and never had any managerial experience when he took over for Tony La Russa. And I think that that's the comparison that you want to draw if you're a Yankee fan. When you sit here and you surmise and you try to figure out, well, how is Aaron Boone going to do, right? And that's the question that's been asked for the last week. When he emerged from this pool of candidates, you sat there and said, well, is he going to be good? We know he can handle the media. You figure he's going to have a good relationship with his players. But is that really the most important thing? Right? Is that really what you... If you're a Yankee fan, do you care how Aaron Boone deals day in and day out behind the scenes in the clubhouse with the players? Do you care what kind of a relationship that Aaron Boone has with Gary Sanchez? Or do you care about what the Yankees do over 9 innings when they step out on that field? Do you care more about if Aaron Boone is Mr. Fun Guy to be around in the clubhouse, in the dugout, and the players like him? Or do you care more about how that Yankee team does when they step between the white lines against the Boston Red Sox? What do you care more about? Because by all accounts, Joe Girardi, I guess, was not Mr. Popular to some players in that clubhouse. Joe Girardi was maybe a little frosty when he had press conferences and he met the media and those sort of things. But those guys played for Joe Girardi, right? Those guys went out there and played maybe above and beyond what they were capable of doing last year for Joe Girardi. They almost made it to the World Series. They knocked off, by all accounts, a team that many favored to be the best team in baseball and go on to win a championship. A team that had won 22 straight games during the regular season. They erased an 0-2 deficit against those Cleveland Indians and went toe-to-toe with the eventual champs, losing in 7 games. That, to me, whether they hate Joe Girardi, whether there was a mutiny against Joe Girardi, that tells me that, you know what, he pushed all the right buttons when it mattered most. And I think every single Yankee fan has to be happy about that. But now Aaron Boone has to do the same exact thing. There's no easing into this job. There's no just stepping in and saying, well, you know, he's going to have a little bit of a grace period. You know, if the Yankees finish third next year and win 80, 85 games and the continued development of the young players, I think Aaron Boone will show that he's a capable manager. No. Aaron Boone, and maybe I'm being a little too harsh here, but I'm sorry. I believe it with all my heart. Aaron Boone stepping into that dugout for 2018 has one objective and one objective only. And it's a trickle down for the entire New York Yankees organization. World Series or bust. That's why you got rid of Girardi. Right? That's why you had to change managers. You got to Game 7 of the ALCS. Next step, World Series. And if Aaron Boone does not get the Yankees to the World Series, it is a disappointing season for the Bronx Bombers. Bottom line. Grace period, there is none. None. He's supposed to step in and continue what not just Joe Girardi accomplished leading this team last year. It's taken him one step further. This is a championship caliber baseball team. And you tell me, am I being a little too harsh? And if you're the Yankee fan, are those things that you really care about, how he communicates with the players? Don't you care more about how the team plays? We know they played hard for Joe Girardi. You know, this isn't a case like you heard with the New York Giants, where they didn't like Ben McAdoo, and there was this mutiny against McAdoo, and you heard all these whispers and rumors that people were quitting on him, and that the players just checked out completely and didn't want any part of playing for this guy. That wasn't the case with Joe Girardi. If it was, the Yankees wouldn't have made it to Game 7 of the ALCS. I don't know how Aaron Boone is going to do. He's good with the media. That's great. How's the team going to play? You know, is Aaron Judge going to have an MVP caliber season again because Aaron Boone is the manager? I don't know. It's almost like we're losing sight of what's important here. And I get it. In this day and age in baseball, it's different, right? Brian Cashman has a ridiculous amount of power within those walls now. And he's been on the job for 2 decades. You look around baseball, the general manager is almost the star of the organization now, not the skipper. You could count on one hand how many guys kind of hold that clout still in this sport, right? Terry Francona does out there in Cleveland. You know, maybe a couple of others, but those days are gone. You know, Joe Torre is retired. Tony La Russa is retired. Bobby Cox is retired. Guys like that, you don't really have these superstar managers anymore. That's gone by the wayside. You don't even think Buck Showalter falls into that category. Maybe Bruce Bochy's another one because he's won 3 championships out there in San Francisco. Joe Madden to a certain extent, but think about Joe Madden. He's got Theo Epstein over his head. And Theo's got a heck of a lot to say in what goes on in that Cubs organization. Yankees got to win. And if the Yankees underachieve and if the Yankees take a step back, and Aaron Boone, unfortunately, is the guy who's going to be on the chopping block here, and it's also going to fall on Brian Cashman's head. Because this was his choice. I think every Yankee fan probably would have been content with Joe Girardi coming back. And I know it's funny that, Girardi was the guy that Yankee fans loved to kill before they were in Game 7 of the ALCS. But then once they made that run in October, it was, oh, Girardi's great, Girardi, oh, what a manager we have. Yeah, because you turned on him like that. And don't get me wrong, the same thing is going to happen with Aaron Boone if they don't win. 866-ESPN is the telephone number, 866-729-3776. Want to hear from you. We'll also hear a little bit from Aaron Boone and some of his comments made today at his introductory press conference. As I said, we'll get into the messy Ball family disaster out there with UCLA. We'll leave poor Lonzo alone. The Lakers got their own problems. We'll get into the Knicks, we'll get into the Giants, and whatever else here over the next couple of hours. Dan Graca is sitting in for Stephen A. on a busy Sports Wednesday here on ESPN Radio.
Hey girl, have you done something new with your scales? Using new moisturizer? Nice. It really brings out the hazel in your eyes. Oh, hold on. Are you using whitening strips too? Your fangs look good, girl. Really good.
A really charming snake charmer? Surprising. What's not surprising? How much you could save by switching to Geico.
Wait, what? Have you been doing Pilates too?
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
You're listening to the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
And Graca in for Stephen A. here on a busy Wednesday at 866-ESPN, 866-729-3776. Shout out to everybody listening on Sirius XM, Channel 80 as well. Aaron Boone met the media earlier today at Yankee Stadium. I found this comment kind of interesting. The question was posed to the new Yankees skipper. He had a nice job, nice cushy gig, of course, working for us at ESPN, and he was doing an outstanding job in the Sunday Night Baseball booth. Why give that up and deal with the rigors and the day in, day out of having to manage a ball club and the travel and having to meet with all us annoying folks in the media? Why would you want to give up the gig you have now and be thrown into the fire like that? Here's what Aaron Boone had to say.
Aaron Marker-Day from 1010 Wins. I just want to piggyback off of Carl's question. Why would you want to leave the comfort of the booth for the cauldron that is the Yankees' managerial job?
Again, I loved my time at ESPN. I loved the job, but the game's been calling. It's been pulling at me. And you miss being part of that team, the competition that goes into, in the end, chasing down a championship. And that's why, as an athlete, that's why we play. And I just feel like the last couple of years, that desire has really started to burn again. And I want to be a part of putting together and chasing down a championship, period.
You can't blame him, right? And this is a guy, look, spent his entire life in baseball, grew up in a baseball family, his father, his grandfather, his brothers, right? Played in the big leagues. He's a baseball lifer. That doesn't mean he's going to be a good manager. But I'll tell you this. If you gave me the choice and I was getting into managing, right? And he said to me, Dan, would you rather take over a team that was built to win now, that had an incredible amount of talent, or would you want to take over a massive rebuild? Where you're going to be having a lot of young players. You're not maybe managing a big market team, so you're not going to have a lot of resources in terms of payroll and flexibility in that regard. I would take the established power. I would take the team that's expected to win, because guess what? And any coach will tell you this. Great coaches, bad coaches. Bill Belichick on down. Greg Popovich on down. A coach is only as good as the players that are playing for him. It's the bottom line. You think Bill Belichick would have 5 Super Bowl rings if he didn't have number 12 as his quarterback? You think Greg Popovich would be tripping over championship trophies in San Antonio if he didn't have Tim Duncan on his team all those years? Phil Jackson without Michael, Scotty, Kobe, Shaq, on and on and on and on and on? No, of course not. Give me the talent, and this Yankee team is stacked with talent. I'll take that any day of the week. Now, look, the expectations are going to be that much greater. So you're expected to win. There's more pressure. I get that, but give me the players. And again, if you want to maybe use a comparison to judge Aaron Boone by as to what he's about to get himself into here, being a first-time skipper, look at Mike Matheny when he took over the St. Louis Cardinals, right? Took over a World Series champion, and Tony La Russa decided to step aside and give up managing. And Mike Matheny took over a team that went to the postseason 4 consecutive years before they've kind of come back to the pack a little bit, got to a World Series. Those are the expectations that are going to be on Aaron Boone's plate here. You must get to the Fall Classic. Otherwise, it's a disappointing season. 866-ESPN, 866-729-3776. We'll start it off today with Juan in the Bronx. Juan, you're on ESPN Radio. How are you?
Hey, how you doing, Dan? Thank you for taking my call.
What's up, Juan?
I feel really bad for Aaron Boone, and the reason I feel really bad for Aaron Boone is because the Yankee fans, they're delusional. I've lived in the Bronx. I was born and raised here, and it's like you can never do anything good. They have the shortest memory, and it's just horrible in that sense. The other thing is, I don't see the Yankees making the playoffs next year.
Why
That's
not?
just the reality. The reason I don't see them doing it is because Aaron Judge had a monster year. Is he going to do that again next year? Brett Garner, the same thing. Didi Gregorius also had an incredible year. And CeCe Sabathia went 10-0 after a Yankee loss. That team is built for the postseason. Remember, they didn't win the division. They were basically a wild card team. They were down 3-0 in that wild card game. Like, it's not a clear cut that they make in the playoffs.
Well, I mean, you could say that every year, Juan, and look, I thank you for the phone call. As we've seen, though, in baseball, you don't have to win a division. So I wouldn't use that as necessarily as a strong argument that that's why the Yankees are doomed in 2018. All right, we've seen wild card teams get red hot and go all the way and win a championship. All right, the Yankees came that close themselves this past season. And if you want to talk about home field advantage, Houston Astros won Game 7 of the World Series in L.A. Last year, Chicago Cubs won Game 7 of the World Series in Cleveland. All right, so home field advantage doesn't necessarily play a big part. Now, if you want to believe that Aaron Judge is not going to have as good a season as he did last year because it's almost impossible, because he was Babe Ruth at times, fine. But remember, Greg Bird missed most of the season. But when he was in there, he showed you that he's pretty good. If Greg Bird could stay on the field, you're going to get a lot of production out of him. Gleyber Torres is going to be back in the mix next year. You've heard people say it all the time. For all intents and purposes, this Yankee team that you saw in 2017, even with all that young talent, might be the worst Yankee team they put on the field in the next 5-6 years. Because they have a litany of talent in the minor leagues. And oh, by the way, let's not preclude them from being active in the free agent market. On the trade front, you name it. Brian Cashman, they're not going to rest. They're going to try to improve the ball club. Mike in Staten Island, you're on ESPN Radio. Hey, Mike.
Hey, how are you? Good afternoon, Dan. How you doing?
Good, Michael. What's going on?
Not much. Just wanted to touch on the Boone thing. I mean, yes, it is not like the Yankees, but think about it. They're gonna probably go after a very experienced bench coach to help them out throughout the season, and like you said, throughout the trade deadline, free agency, still a lot to be played. I mean, I think they may make the playoffs, but 162, it's far from April to October. Right.
I'm really, Mike, and I thank you for the phone call. I'm really surprised, and again, this is just our first couple of callers, that the bar has been lowered that much. Now, I'm curious, and you could tell me, Is this all because they have a new manager, because they have a guy who's inexperienced at the helm, and that's going to doom them that much? Again, Joe Girardi, I thought was a really good manager, and clearly he got a raw deal with how things worked out with him in the organization at the end of last year. Completely a raw deal. But just because you have a new skipper, you still have all those players. You still have all that talent, and at the end of the day, that's what matters, right? And this is a question that I don't know if there's really a concrete answer for. How many wins and losses is the baseball manager responsible for, right? I think football, more than any of the major sports, clearly the coach can make that big of a difference. Football's number one. Where does baseball rank on that list? Remember, you play 162 games, right? If a guy sends, see, here's the problem. If you're a baseball skipper and you send, one of your top starting pitchers out to the mound on his day to pitch, and he just doesn't have it. He doesn't have it, and he gives up 5 runs in the first inning. You know what? You're facing an uphill battle, and you might not win the game. Is that the manager's fault? Right? The pitcher goes out there, he doesn't have it. Is that the manager's fault? No, he gave the ball to the guy that he's supposed to give the ball to. How does that fall on the manager? So I don't know really how to quantify all those things. I guess we'll find out here over the course of the season. But if you think the Yankees are not making the playoffs next year, forget about not making the playoffs. This is a team that's going to be favored to go to and win the World Series. You're really banking on a lot of guys having come back to the pack performances next year. And I don't necessarily buy it just yet. Still a lot more to do. 866-ESPN, 866-729-3776. It's Dan Graca in for Stephen A. here on ESPN Radio.
Guess what? You're in the middle of the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
Damn it, I mean it!
Dan Graca in for Stephen A. today on a busy Wednesday. It's ESPN Radio, 866-SAY-ESPN, 866-729-3776. You can tweet at me as well, at Dan Graca, Graca. Let's say hi to Dalton in Jersey City. Dalton, you're on ESPN Radio. How are you?
Hey, dude. Hi. How are you?
Good, Dalton. What's going on?
What's your thoughts on Joe Girardi's firing?
My thoughts on Joe Girardi's firing? I don't think it was anything performance-related. Wouldn't you?
Yeah, I think it was.
How so?
Because I think he performed well.
Well, he performed well, so then why would it be performance-related then for him getting fired?
Because the Yankees are a franchise that always likes to win.
Okay, so you think that the Yankees underachieved last year by going to Game 7 of the ALCS?
Yes.
What were the expectations for the Yankees at the beginning of the season?
I don't know. They had one of the best, really good teams.
Dalton, I thank you for your phone call. It's obvious that you bleed pinstripes. You're on top of the team from start to finish. But if you thought the expectations for the Yankees at the beginning of the year were anywhere near what they ultimately became, then you obviously weren't paying attention. Okay? Remember, Aaron Judge, and I don't mean to go back in the time machine here, because I figure if you're listening to the show, you know what the Yankees are about. You know, you're a good baseball fan. Right? Aaron Judge was a guy who, in his brief cup of coffee at the tail end of 2016, struck out half the times he was in the batter's box. It was a guy who entered spring training not even assured of winning the everyday right fielder's job. Remember that? Nobody in the Vegas odds list at the beginning of the year for American League MVP, I don't even know if Aaron Judge was listed. Don't even know if he was listed. And the guy was the runner-up. And there were several others who played above and beyond what the expectations were of them. Wasn't Joe Girardi's fault. We know that. Johnny wants to talk some Yankees. John, you're on ESPN Radio. How are you?
Hey, man. How you doing?
Good, John. What's going on?
Hey, man. I think Girardi, man, he didn't get a raw deal, man. He's been mismanaging that club. There's one simple point with it. The bullpen, man. He's overusing Robertson, and he should have been riding Chapman and bringing him in games, and even the 6th, 7th inning, you got to bring him in and ride him. He's babying him for no reason at all. Well, and that's why he got fired. He should have been fired.
But, Johnny, let me ask you a question. If you thought he was babying Chapman, okay, what about when he actually did something that maybe most managers wouldn't do, especially when you have a closer like Chapman who was getting paid a record sum of money for a closer position? Remember when he removed him from the closer's role there in the middle of the summer?
It's irrelevant, though. I mean, like I said, you ride him, you bring him in for 2-3 innings if you have to.
But if it's irrelevant, though, see, that doesn't make any sense, though, John. How can you say it's irrelevant?
You also got Bettensis, too, who's a closeout guy.
Well, wait a second. First of all, his name, Johnny. First of all, his name is Betances, not Bettensis. I don't know who that guy is. But Betances couldn't get anybody out at the end of the season. What was he supposed to do? Keep throwing him out there? He couldn't get me out.
That's why he didn't pitch. That's why he didn't pitch in the division in the championship.
John, you're contradicting yourself. You're saying he should have pitched Chapman more when there was a time when Chapman couldn't get anybody out, and you're also saying he should have pitched Betances more when he couldn't get anybody out. What did you want him to do?
Nah. Bring Chapman in. Bring Chapman in when you have the lead in the 6th and 7th inning to get that final out. You don't bring Robertson in with bases loaded trying to get 3 outs.
John, Chapman was gassed. Thank you for the phone call. Chapman, remember in spring training, way back in spring training, Chapman told the media, you know what? I'm a little worn down from the way Joe Madden used me when he went all the way to the World Series with the Cubs in the month of October. And he went through his ruts this year with the Yankees to where he couldn't get anybody out. And Girardi did something that most managers probably wouldn't have been able to get away with. Sitting down Aroldis Chapman, who was getting paid more than any closer in the history of baseball. You give him credit for that. I mean, seriously, when are the Yankee fans going to give this up about Joe Girardi and the stupid bullpen and what he did in the 6th inning, the 7th inning? The guy got to 1 game of the World Series with a team that wasn't supposed to do anything this year. I mean, gee whiz. You know, when in the last 3-4 years, when this Yankee team really didn't accomplish much, when during those seasons were the New York Yankees supposed to win a championship? Tell me, what were the years? When did the Yankees underachieve? I mean, even in 2015, when they made it to the wild card and they got blanked by Dallas Keuchel, think about that. That team probably wasn't even postseason caliber. And all the garbage that he had to deal with, from the Alex Rodriguez situation on down, and the fact that he kept the team together. You know, you're not going to win every single season. It happens. And especially when you come off a run like the Yankees had, eventually you got to turn over a new leaf and bring some young guys into the system. And I think he did that brilliantly this year. They became a championship caliber team under his watch. Hey, like I said, you think Aaron Boone's got all the answers? If they think Aaron Boone is the reason that they're going to start winning or win further than they did this year, I can't wait to see it. Dominic in Brooklyn, you're on ESPN Radio. What's up, Dom?
Hello?
What's up, Dom? How are you?
Hey, what's going on? Yeah, I wanted to say that I think the Girardi firing, it kind of reminds me of when the Giants got rid of Coughlin for McAdoo, and we all know how that turned out. And
well, you hope that he's not another Ben McAdoo. I mean, let's be honest. if Aaron Boone is another Ben McAdoo, you know what? I'll save you a lot of time. You don't even have to watch the games because that'll be a disaster.
But that's exactly what it reminds me of. It's like you're going to get rid of a coach that's proven, that's shown, you know, what he can do. For a guy with no experience, that's a bold move.
Hey, but that's the way baseball's going now, Dom, right? It's different. The game is changing. Now it's more about communication and embracing analytics and sabermetrics. It's not as much managing with your gut. It's not as much about, I've been in baseball for 60 years and I've seen every possible situation that could develop on the field and I know what to do. No, it doesn't matter. It does not matter because you know what? The guy who's sitting up there in the office and in the suite and running the franchise, he also has a big say about what goes on, just as much even as the manager. So we're turning over a new leaf here in Major League Baseball.
Well, let's hope it doesn't turn out like the McAdoo situation.
Well, again, if you're Dom, you can't think that. I mean, if you're thinking that, like I said, no bother even turning on the television this year. And I don't think it's going to be that bad. See, the difference is, and I thank you for the phone call, Dom, unless the Yankees just absolutely get ravaged with injuries, and I mean their pitching staff falls apart, the guys in the back end of the bullpen suddenly are on the shelf, you know, some of the big boppers in the lineup. Unless that happens, this team's going to win. This team's going to be competitive. I can't see a scenario, again, health aside, that they're going to be already out of the race the 4th of July. You know, this team's going to be in the mix. As I said earlier in the show, guys, give me the talent any day of the week. You're telling me that I'm managing? Give me talent. And Aaron Boone is playing with a stacked deck his first time as a big league skipper. 866-ESPN, 866-729-3776. Dan Graca in for Stephen A. as we roll on ESPN Radio.
Guess what? You're in the middle of the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
Damn it, I mean it!
Until 3 o'clock Eastern Time, noon Pacific. Dan Graca in for Stephen A. here on ESPN Radio. 866-ESPN, the telephone number, 866-729-3776. At Dan Graca on Twitter. I still get a kick out of the LaVar Ball stuff. I really do. And we know he put his foot in his mouth many a times. Certainly when Lonzo was at UCLA last year and all the garbage that he talked about him, that he was going to be better than Steph Curry, that he was going to be one of the all-time greats in the NBA, that he was better than this guy, that he was better than that guy. And we know that that's not working out too good so far, at least in his brief introduction to the NBA. Will he be able to turn it around? Will he be able to improve on what we've seen so far? Clearly, he's got a lot of improvement that's needed, at least in the shooting department, and several other areas as well. And then this situation with LiAngelo and a couple of his UCLA buddies in China, shoplifting, getting detained over there. And then we find out that he pulls LiAngelo out of UCLA because the punishment was a little too harsh. You know, check that one for accountability, right? Score one for accountability and for discipline and teaching your kids right from wrong. Wow. I mean, you would have thought that maybe this would have been kind of the last straw with everything that happened in China, that maybe he would have finally taken a step back and learned his lesson. And maybe, just maybe, by the sales that aren't exactly skyrocketing of the Big Baller brand, not exactly taking off for the holiday season. You know, I didn't get any, doorbuster coupons from Big Baller brand or promo codes for some, Black Friday online shopping or anything like that. I didn't get any in my inbox. I don't know how many people are, tying up the traffic on that website. But to make a long story short, he's got his agenda, right? He's got his theme, and he won't give it up. And you admire him from that. If you're going to go down, you go down swinging. If you're going to try to sell crazy, then you know what? You sell it until you just can't sell it anymore. And as long as there's people out there willing to sit there and hear your garbage, then there's going to be a platform and a place for him. Like the other day when he was on with Chris Cuomo on CNN. Take a listen to some of this stuff.
We got the NCAA holding back where they waiting 2 and 3 months to tell him if he can play or not. That's one of the main reasons he went to UCLA, is to play basketball. That's his passion. And for them to prolong this and go on and on, it's ridiculous to me. It's been long enough punishment.
Says who?
I mean, we got to hold it. Look at these. These coaches is making a grip of money. We got to be mindful now that they could be under this too, on the fact that they got to hold a little accountability. Okay, over there in China, they dropped the charges.
Lucky for you.
Okay, I think the boys have learned their lesson. Yes, they learned their lesson. I'm always lucky, so that's okay. But they learned their lesson, and now it's a harsher treatment over here. China already forgave the boys, and they returned it. I mean, why else are we still manhandling them as far as keeping them from playing sports, taking their meal passes, taking their stuff where they can't practice in the facility? I mean, come on. They already apologized. They already did all that. So what are we holding on to make a point for what? They've already been forgiven over there. So what's the big deal? So I'm saying is, let's get back over here and start their lives back. I think they had enough.
You know what the funny one to me was, and we didn't have it in that clip there, in that little snippet that we played for you? I liked it when he actually had the nerve to blame the folks at UCLA, the adults that were with the team in China, for their indiscretion and for them going out there and shoplifting. He blamed the adults. He blamed the school. I mean, are you kidding me? And look, it's easy. The NCAA is an easy target. I get it. All right, and I'm as critical and as hard on the NCAA and on college sports as governing body than anybody else out there. I agree with you 100%. So in this case, you know what? If he has, let's say, one crutch to fall back on and he wants to blame the school and the NCAA and the structure and all that stuff, fine. You know what? I might be able to meet you halfway there, but not with this. NCAA has nothing to do with this. The NCAA didn't go steal in China. UCLA, Steve Alford, they did not go steal in China, right? They didn't do this. It wasn't a setup. You think that UCLA, hired some guy to follow these kids into the store and to put merchandise in their pockets? Kind of just slip it in there when they weren't looking, so maybe they'd get caught and they would be able to free themselves of the Ball family burden on UCLA, even though we know that Steve Alford and everybody at the school are doing cartwheels when they found out that he pulled LiAngelo out of the school. I mean, they had a party. They were shooting off fireworks in Pauley Pavilion, for crying out loud. Indoors, which is very dangerous, and I don't recommend that to anybody. But they were thrilled. But you know what? We asked the question, when is this guy going to learn? When is this guy going to get it? When is this guy going to wise it? I think the answer's never. Really, I think it's never. And he's running out of bullets. He really is. Okay, because he talked up one kid that he was going to be the greatest thing since sliced bread in the NBA. He talked about LiAngelo, how he was going to make this tremendous impact at UCLA and be a bona fide star in the NBA. And then now he himself, that sage basketball tutor that he is going to develop LiAngelo and make him a high first-round draft pick and an NBA superstar. Let's see how that one turns out. I wouldn't exactly bet the ranch on that one either. And then who knows what young LaMelo's going to become. If I'm LaMelo, I go get my name changed. That's what I do. I try to distance myself from, the Ball family, period. I don't know, go find religion or something. Come up with, a new professional name, a stage name, one of these entertainers or something like that. Maybe just go, with one. Maybe just call yourself LaMelo. No last name, nothing. LaMelo. And then people maybe will forget that he's part of the Ball family, because that's the only shot he has. It's the only shot he has. You thought that he wasn't doing Lonzo any favors. What about the trickle-down effect to the other boys? It's the same thing. But don't think that it's UCLA's doing. Or blame the adults. Learn right from wrong. Take some responsibility. It's an hour. We got one more to play with. Dan Graca in for Stephen A. It's ESPN Radio.
That's just a sample of what you'll hear on the Stephen A. Smith Show. Weekdays at 1 p.m. Eastern on Sirius XM Channel 80 and the ESPN app.
This week, tune into the Paul Feinbaum Show as I discuss
the delicious taste of ice cold Dr. Pepper.
Larry Culpepper? Hey, I'm in the middle of a promo.
Sorry, Finey. The fans are craving so much Dr. Pepper, I thought I'd borrow some of your airtime.
Security!
Hey, look, whether you're watching college football or calling into some guy's radio show, Dr. Pepper makes college football that much sweeter. So grab some at your local store today.
Can I have one of yours?
Hey, we got a caller. You're on the Larry Culpepper Show with your host, Larry Culpepper.
That's it.
That's Dr. Pepper, the one fans crave. Available at Walmart.
This is the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
I'm Stephen A.
Hour number 2 on a busy Wednesday afternoon. It's Dan Graca in for Stephen A. here on ESPN Radio. You know the drill. It's 866-ESPN, 866-729-3776. Keep on tweeting at me at Dan Graca, Graca. I'll tell you, there's so much happening in the world of sports right now. You know, we spent a lot of that first hour talking about the Yankees, and we'll get back to the phones and the Aaron Boone and, you know, the LaVar Ball mess out there on the West Coast. Where will Giancarlo Stanton end up? The Giants mess with Eli Manning and the quarterback position and where that organization is headed, all that stuff. But the thing that's really just preoccupying my mind really throughout this show, and I can't get past, it's consuming me, is that we got the TV on in the studio, and I'm looking over, and of course ESPN is on, and NFL Live is on, which is a great program. And one of the guys up there on the panel is none other than our good friend, Herm Edwards. But Herm was introduced a couple of days ago as the new football coach at Arizona State, and I think he's going to be outstanding, by the way. Outstanding. All these people saying that, you know, what is Arizona State doing? Please, They got themselves a good coach. I've been saying it for years, that Herm is going to be more suited for the college game. You imagine that guy walking into your living room if you're a recruit and him putting the sales pitch on you and you're going to be able to say no to that guy? He's going to have some good recruiting classes. And, oh, by the way, you're recruiting to some nice weather out there, too? Their worst play. He's not recruiting to North Dakota to go have kids come and play football. But that being said, I'm surprised that he's back on TV duty after he took over the job. Because normally when you take a job, you're gone, right? You got to devote every waking moment to beefing up your program and to getting it back on the right track. Like, how did that conversation go down with Arizona State? It's like, yeah, I'll take the job, but I got NFL Live on Wednesday. I can't get out of it. It's the holiday season. A couple people took. I already committed to NFL Live. I can't go back on my word. I'm really concerned. I wish we could make a call. I'm sure we can to the powers that be up in Bristol just to find out. Like, how did that work? Couldn't Herm get the day off, or did they make Herm work, or is Herm just an honorable guy and he held true to his commitment? But Herm won the press conference, as they say, and Herm knows how to work the room. Did you catch that give and take that he had with one of the members of the media at his presser the other day? I guess one of the publications there for the Sun Devils is something called Devil's Digest, and Herm had some fun with that. Take a listen.
Code Rubino, Devil's Digest.
Devil's Digest, huh?
Yes, sir.
Where are you located, my man?
Right here in Tempe.
Okay, Devil's Digest. Okay. I'm Catholic now. I'm a Christian. Watch out, them devils. I'm just saying.
Well,
we're good, brother.
You can see devils all over the place.
I ain't taking it personal.
And people, of course, their naivete, or I don't know what reason, they hear that and they're making like, oh, my, Herm doesn't know the mascot for the team that he is now going to coach. He doesn't know that Arizona State is the. Come on. What do you think? He's an idiot? You mean to tell, what was he, born yesterday, that he had no idea who Arizona State was? Herm's a West Coast guy. He's never heard of Arizona State, the Sun Devils, and he doesn't know the team that he is now the head football coach for are called the Sun Devils. It's Herm being Herm. He's a funny guy. Stop taking everything so literally. My goodness. And he's going to do an outstanding job. He really is. I know it's tough out there in the Pac-12. You got a lot of competition. I mean, you got the Wildcats in state that you're going to have to contend with as well. Same conference, going for the same football players. But Herm's going to do a good job. And if you're a parent and you're sending a kid to college and you need somebody to watch over your son for the next 4 or 5 years and to help them grow and to develop as a person and as a football player, Herm's an honorable guy. And I really wish him all the luck in the world. 866-ESPN is the telephone number, 866-729-3776. Let's say hi to Ronell. Ronell, you're on ESPN Radio. How are you?
I'm doing good, sir. Appreciate taking for the call. I want to give my take on the LaVar Ball thing. As a father of 2 African-American boys, I thank God for him. And the reason why I say that, because he showed me what not to do if my sons are going to be potentially famous. Mm-hmm. But so far, he's costed Lonzo Ball millions for, like, being all this baller brand stuff. So he could have got the Nike deal. They brought his brand out later on. And so far, he might have jeopardized LiAngelo's career and potentially is going to hurt his youngest son's career. Now, he did a good job of raising them to be basketball players, but as a parent, not letting them take accountability for what they did and not really saying thank you for giving my son out of a jam, it just showed me what, as an African-American father, that what not to do, especially with my 2 boys. And I do. But
Ronell, let me ask you a question though. Does race even factor in here? Because you said as an African American father, wouldn't that carry true for any father, no matter what color your skin is?
That's true though. But since the narrative for African American stereotype of fathers that they're not really around, so it seems like he's carrying that. Oh, I'm here, so I can do this. Oh, your job is to be there and also to be a parent, but as a father of, in regards to you black or white, you don't want to be like that. If you want your kids to succeed, you have to let them succeed. And for Lonzo Ball, I think he would play better if he got drafted by the other team. So he'd be completely away from dad, away from the house, and let him grow to be a man. So he's doing more harm to his kids than he actually thinks. by putting himself out, being just talking all kind of stuff. And he should just like, son, it's your time to be a man. So I think he's just doing a terrible job, as in letting his kids become the next stage of man, which is to be a man, to be an adult.
Yeah. Reinell, good phone call. I appreciate it. And you know, look, I think any parent would tell you that if something like that happens, you would hope it would be used as a teaching moment, as they say. You know, there's more to life than just basketball, because basketball can't always get you out of a jam. You know, your talents, your abilities, your God-given talents, that's not always going to be the answer. Because sometimes you got to face the music when you screw up. And these kids screwed up. And it seems like, to me, instead of trying to teach them and impart some responsibility, he's making excuses. And with all the other stuff that predated this, even with Lonzo, and look, we knew this. He didn't do him any favors, talking him up, just saying these outlandish things about him and what he was going to do in the NBA and just how this transformative player he was going to become. He did not do him any favors. And you have, let's remember something, you have grown men who are in the NBA, right? Guys who are professionals, guys who've been in the league 10 years, who made a living, who've honed their craft, who have families of their own, kids of their own. You think they want to hear from this guy who's sending a teenager into the NBA? And remember, this is pro basketball. These are livelihoods at stake. You think these grown men who have families and who have kids they got to feed, that they want to hear about some punk teenager who's going to come in and take jobs away from them and take money away from them and try to embarrass them? Please. And you see how it's working out, right? I don't think we have to justify it. You see how things are working out already. 866-ESPN. Chris in Jersey up next. Christopher, you're on ESPN. How are you?
Hey, how's it going?
What's up, Chris?
I'm calling to agree with you on the Yankees, but first I want to go back to the Ball thing. It's like he has an AAU mentality. Normally it's the kids that are supposed to be spoiled and, be told that they can have anything they want just based on their basketball acumen. But it seems like all that stuff that's been told to Lonzo and LiAngelo as they've been growing up has shifted up into their father's brain. On the Yankees, for the past 5 years, they've been dumping salary and, trying to retool through the farm system and so on and so forth.
And steer clear of the luxury tax. That's the primary reason. They want to get down that luxury tax because not to go off on a tangent on that, the new measures that Major League Baseball has put in regarding exceeding the luxury tax threshold, those punishments are pretty punitive. So I don't care if you're the Yankees, you're the Dodgers, and the Dodgers want to steer clear of that because the punishments are almost like 50% greater if you exceed. So they do not want to have to pay those taxes.
The point I was making was that even with them not going out and spending like the Yankees of the early 2000s, late 90s, Girardi's kept them in contention year after year after year, and he gets a little bit of talent last year, and he gets them within a whisper of the World Series. So, Aaron Boone has some really big shoes to fill. Lastly, I just wanted to get your opinion. A lot of people said the Giants were supposed to be a Super Bowl team this year or had a chance to be a Super Bowl team. Obviously, they're not because their GM didn't really pay attention to their offensive line. Do you think that given the talent that they do have with the right coach and the right GM, do you think they could, quote-unquote, retool like the Yankees did and be in contention sooner rather than later?
In the NFL, anything is possible, Chris, and I thank you for the phone call. We know the way the league operates from one year to the next. You could be good again. You can. And there is talent on this team. And on that note, Steve Spagnuolo, who's meeting with the media now, as we speak, made it official that Eli Manning will indeed return as the starting quarterback. So the consecutive start streak is back to 1 for Eli. He went from 210, and now he's going to start a new one up now at 1 on Sunday against the Cowboys. They had to do it. They said they're still formulating a plan as to when Davis Webb is going to play. Nothing concrete, nothing definitive now as we speak. But back to the point that Chris made. Let me take you back about 20 years ago, okay? The Rich Kotite disaster with the New York Jets. And in Kotite's second and ultimately last season with the Jets, they finished 1-15. All right, that offseason prior, they went out and they made a lot of improvements in personnel. They had Keyshawn Johnson, who was the number 1 overall pick in the draft. Okay, big-time player. They gave a huge contract at the time to Neil O'Donnell, who was coming off of a Super Bowl with the Steelers. Didn't play well in the game, but still upgraded the quarterback position. They gave him 5 years, $25 million, which at the time was, outlandish for a quarterback. So they brought in Jeff Graham, who was a very, very good wide receiver, Jumbo Elliott, David Williams, a couple of new offensive tackles. They went out and spent money. That's the bottom line. And they went out and had a 1-15 season. They were even worse. What happens? Bill Parcells comes in 1997. They go from 1-15 to 9-7. An 8-win improvement. Why? Discipline, first and foremost. Accountability, and not to mention better coaching. And they didn't make wholesale personnel changes from 96 to 97. Still a lot of those same guys were there. They just had better coaching. So if the Giants get their act right, make a few tweaks here and there, they're going to get a really good draft pick. Remember, they're going to probably be picking in the top 3. So you're bringing in an impact player, you figure. Hopefully you bring in a better coach. I don't think you could do much worse than Ben McAdoo was. There's still some talent. Remember, there's talent on this team. They won 11 games last year. They made the playoffs. So, yeah, if you're asking me, can the Giants go back to being a winning team in 2018? The answer is absolutely yes. Absolutely. David's calling next. David, you're on ESPN Radio. How are you?
Hey, how you doing, buddy?
Good, Dave. What's up?
Hey, I just wanted to comment regarding Aaron Boone, and I'm with you on this. I don't know what's going on with this New York market. The first phrase that comes to mind is there's no loyalty among thieves. They literally are handing this man a championship, because I truly believe that the Yankees will win the championship next year. And if they don't do it, they'll do it the year next. However, when the Yankees win, it'll be Girardi's team. So they've just handed it to Aaron Boone. And the way they treated Eli Manning, good grief. I mean, the whole offensive line was broke. I truly believe they should give Eli Manning one more year as a starting quarterback to take that team to the top. If Eli Manning leaves next year, oh, my goodness, they really did him wrong, and they did Girardi wrong. I don't know what's going on with the New York market. I really don't.
Chris, thanks for the phone call. Dave, excuse me. A couple of things. Number one, if you're asking me, can the Giants win next year with Eli as their quarterback? The answer is yes. Do I think he'll still be on the team? That's 50-50. Remember, he's due a $5 million roster bonus on the third day of the league year coming up in March. I don't know if the Giants are going to want to pay that. And I don't know if Eli wants to stick around. I'm sure Jacksonville and his old buddy Tom Coughlin's going to come calling, among others. Denver, a place where his brother had success, needs a quarterback in the worst way. I'm sure that there will be other suitors as well. As far as the Yankees are concerned, if you think that Joe Girardi is going to be, another coming of Buck Showalter with the Yankees, meaning, remember, Buck Showalter took that team to the playoffs, stood charged there with a rebuild, got him to a certain point, then Joe Torre came in and reaped the rewards and won 4 world championships. You think that Joe Girardi is going to kind of follow along those lines? Maybe. Remains to be seen, but Aaron Boone is walking into a good situation, as we've said. A lot of talent on that club. Dan Graca in for Stephen A. We're going to the top of the hour here on ESPN Radio.
Hey girl, have you done something new with your scales? Using new moisturizer? Nice. It really brings out the hazel in your eyes. Oh, hold on. Are you using whitening strips too? Your fangs look good, girl. Really good.
A really charming snake charmer? Surprising. What's not surprising? How much you could save by switching to Geico.
Wait, what? Have you been doing Pilates too?
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
You're listening to the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
Late, great Tom Petty. Dan Graca in for Stephen A. 866-ESPN, 866-729-3776. On the UCLA front, and again, this is a serious matter, no joking, with the wildfires out there in California, and we send our best and our prayers to everybody out there and, hope you get through it. I mean, I've seen some of those pictures and videos. It looks like a movie. I'm waiting for Howie Long to walk out of there, so it is just awful. UCLA has canceled tonight's men's basketball game against Montana due to concerns stemming from area wildfires. Bruins also announced all other team workouts and practices scheduled for today also have been canceled. That is some scary stuff out there. So hopefully hopefully everybody does their best to soldier on there. It's scary stuff. Let's say hi to Lee in Sacramento. Lee, you're on ESPN Radio. How are you?
I'm good, man. How are you? Listen,
What's up,
Lee? I agree with everything you said about the Yankees. I was waiting, listening. I'm like, you were making all my points. But you did get me fired up about LaVar Ball, and I'm just going to call it like I see it.
Yeah.
Am I the only one that thinks he's like a snake oil salesman? And this is all for shoes. I mean, you were just talking a second ago about how these are grown men in the NBA. Well, he's stinting that process for Lonzo, in my opinion, and he's not allowing him to do that. He's treating him like he's in T-ball, and I feel like this whole thing has gotten out of control. We've given him way too much of the microphone, and he's selling us, to be honest, mediocre so far players in the way they're acting off the court, some of them that are on the court. But at the end of the day, this is all about him selling his shoes. Like that's what this is all about, and I don't know why it doesn't seem that obvious to everybody else.
No, I think there's truth to that. Now, let me ask you a question, Lee. All right, you seem like a smart guy. You seem like you're well-adjusted. You got a good head on your shoulders, right? Have you ever contemplated for a second buying any of the big baller stuff?
Never.
Do you know anybody who has either bought it or thought about buying anything?
I've only heard people on the air talk about it, and they haven't even gotten them yet.
Yeah, like I said, I don't think they're flying off the shelves. I don't think there's a lot of website traffic during the holidays. So, look, whatever he's doing, I'll tell you this, I don't think it's good for business. So if that is the approach, and I agree with you, I do think to a certain extent that is the case, and it applies a little bit here, I don't think it's helping business in any way.
Snake oil salesman, that's just how I feel every time I see him or hear him talk. I feel like he's trying to pitch me on something. It's like, let your kids play ball. Let Lonzo come into his own on the court. Right now, all I see is if Lonzo misses a couple shots, in my mind, he's going home and getting yelled at by LaVar. Do you know what I'm saying? It just doesn't feel like it's supposed to.
Yeah. Lee, thanks for the call, buddy. Look, I think he's a wonderful self-promoter, right? I mean, he's taken the family name and made it national, but when it comes to the business side of things and whether or not it's helping out their brand, so to speak, he's as useful right now as a snowblower salesman in the desert. I really believe that. I mean, nobody cares about his stuff. He can wear that stupid hat on all the TV interviews he does and the logo and the brand. It's not compelling me or anybody else that I know to go out there and buy any of it. Because what does it stand for? I mean, who is the athlete, right? Who's the major athlete that is behind this and going out there and exhibiting this on a night-in, night-out basis? What, Lonzo? How's that working out in the NBA with the Lakers? How are they faring? How's he faring? Right? The other kid just got pulled out of school. How's that working out? What, are they going to sell that stuff at the Louis Vuitton store in China? Is that what he was doing, working a deal there, trying to do some business? I don't think so. Kareem in Manhattan up next. Kareem, you're on ESPN Radio. How are you?
Hey, how you doing? Thanks for having me.
What's up, Kareem?
Hey, you know what? I want to talk about Lonzo Ball. I think he's getting a lot of unfair criticism, but, I mean, he put himself in that situation. I just look at it like this. LaVar Ball is from Compton, I believe, grew up in the streets. He could have went the wrong way, like a lot of young black men, but he didn't. He made himself into a good person. He married a white woman, beautiful lady. Her parents were against it. Around that time, they was big on, racism is still here now. So my point is, he turned his life around. Mm-hmm. He made good money. They put together a good family. They in a nice home. So what I'm saying is, all this basketball stuff, at the end of the day, he's a father. He's a father first. So if he wants to pull his son out of school because he don't want his son to deal with all the scrutiny, and other courts, other teams, they can be brutal. Maybe he doesn't want his kid to go through that. There's a lot of kids that go overseas, that grow up overseas, that turn pro at a young age. So if he wants to go that route, the one thing his family has going for them, they're popular, like the Kardashians. Who knows what their school history was like, but they're rich. They're selling makeup, top of the line. Why? Because they're popular. So he's banking off his kids' popularity, but he hasn't done anything to hurt anyone. And everyone's saying he's doing them bad. He's living the American dream. He has no boss. He doesn't answer to anyone, and I think that's the problem that people have with him. He lives the way he wants to live. He does it. He raises his family the way he wants to, and it's working for them. People may not say it's working, but how many fathers want to have a child in the NBA, wants to have 2 other children that has potential to go to the NBA. So I think, LaVar, you keep doing your thing. If they put a microphone in your face, that's because they want to hear what you got to say. He put it up. It's supply and demand. So as long as he's in demand, then he's gonna be out there, and people should just be able to say, listen, he's not a traditional guy, never has been. But he was a practice squad player for the NFL.
Right.
He was a trainer, so he was a hustler. He hustled his money to put his family in a position to be where they are now. So I think people just get caught up in all of the rhetoric and say, listen, this guy is an American that he's an entrepreneur, and he's controversial, and negative publicity, bad publicity, whatever, it's all good publicity, and that's what he's living off of. So people can hate all they want, but he ain't do nothing to hurt nobody. His children are good children. They made a mistake. Maybe he doesn't want his kid to go through the scrutiny. Maybe he wants to have his own sneaker. Maybe he wants him to go overseas and go another route. But there's nothing wrong with going another route just because he's not going through the blueprint that everybody else went. Let that man live. He's not hurting nobody.
Well, you can say, look, everything you said, there's a certain degree of truth to that, Kareem, and I appreciate the call. All right, you make some good points. However, you could say that he's present. He's very much a hands-on father. All right, you give him credit for that. But is that something that we should really be bending over backwards commending him for? I mean, there is some inherent responsibility whenever you do become a parent. You should be there for your kids. It's like with an athlete. When you're talking about an athlete, when they say, he plays hard. They gave effort. They played hard. Well, shouldn't they? They're getting paid millions of dollars. That's at the very least. They could play hard. But he also just had a kid who was detained for shoplifting in China. And he's kind of poo-pooing it as if it's no big deal. That's just the beginning. What happens if another episode happens moving forward because LiAngelo thinks, you know what? My father didn't care what I did. I could go out and do whatever I please because I'm a member of the Ball family. We're entitled. We can get away with anything. That's the danger. 866-ESPN, 866-729-3776. Steve Spagnuolo spoke. Eli Manning spoke. We'll get the comments from the old starting quarterback of the Giants and now their new head coach, at least for the next 4 weeks. Dan Graca in for Stephen A. till the top of the hour on ESPN Radio.
Guess what? You're in the middle of the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
Damn it, I mean it!
Graca in for Stephen A. We're rolling till the top of the hour here on ESPN Radio. 866-ESPN, 866-729-3776. Giants, of course, cutting ties with Ben McAdoo and Jerry Reese a couple of days ago in a move that, look, it saves face. It's more to calm the pack of wolves that are the angry Giant fan mob than anything else. And I say it all along, and I'll stick to it, even in the aftermath of what's been done. I don't believe that there's anything you gain from firing a head coach midseason in the National Football League. I really believe that. All right, it became apparent that Ben McAdoo was not going to be the head coach next season for the Giants. Look, if you think that, you get a few more fans in the building for the remaining home games, and granted, they still have got home games against their division rivals to close out the season. So don't think for a second that played a role into it. It's business more than anything else, and especially this week with the Dallas Cowboys, maybe their biggest rival, right, in that building where you know that there's going to be a ton of Cowboy fans at MetLife Stadium. Throw in the fact of how they butchered the Eli Manning situation. All right, they were kind of backed up to the wall, and something had to be done. So now Steve Spagnuolo takes over, and hey, they have to pick somebody to be the interim head coach, and that's why it's kind of laughable to me, because how's that Giant defense played this year? Right? They've been a disaster. All the issues when you questioned the effort and the suspensions and the insubordination or whatever you want to call it from the New York Giants this year, a lot of it came from the defensive side of the ball. So the guy who shepherded that unit was Steve Spagnuolo, and now you're rewarding him to a sense by making him the interim head coach for the last 4 weeks of the season. They would have been better off, I think, picking a guy off the street. Go to your season ticket base and have a raffle. Do you want to coach the Giants in the month of December? Well, you can win. It could be your lucky day. Chance of a lifetime. They're more worthy than Steve Spagnuolo. So Spags did the first thing that he could do to get him at least temporarily back in the good graces of the Giant fan, and that's make Eli the quarterback for Sunday against the Cowboys. How long he remains the quarterback remains to be seen. But here was Steve Spagnuolo moments ago out there in East Rutherford in his first meeting with the media as the interim coach of the football Giants.
Eli Manning will be the quarterback for this football team in this game. Okay, the why, Eli, all I can tell you is this. When John Mara and I talked, one of the first things he asked was about the quarterback situation, and I said, John, my gut right now is that Eli should be the starter. What you have to understand is when I was coaching just the defense, I have the blinders on, and all I'm worried about is the defense. I stay in my lane. So I didn't have my eyes around what was going on offense, who was playing, none of that. So I took my gut and visited with the offensive coaches, and together with that and my gut, Eli Manning's going to be our quarterback. So for right now, I'm staying heavily involved with the defense and the game planning. Obviously, with some new duties here, I'll be in and out of there. Okay, so when I'm not there and somebody has to cover, Dave Merritt will do that. We'll worry about calling the game on Sunday when we get to Sunday. I will figure that out as we go. I'll be honest with you, I'm not focused at all on that. And I would say this to everybody, and I mean this sincerely, I leave that in God's hands. I'll be where he wants me to be. And right now he wants me to be here for this game, and that's how I'll function. And that's as honest as I can be.
Well, just in a few comments, there's a lot that you could take from that. He threw out the G word, right, which you always commend somebody for. So we'll see who, God wants to coach the Giants next year. I don't know if it'll be Spags, it'll be somebody else, but we'll wait and see. We're on his time. We're all on his time. But I thought it was funny. Immediately when he announces Eli's the starting quarterback, he goes, why? Well, I'll tell you why. And he told you that he had his blinders on and he was focused on the defense, as any defensive coordinator should be. But he met with the coaches, the offensive coaches, and they put their heads together and they came to the conclusion that Eli Manning is the best fit to be the starting quarterback of the New York Giants. He conveniently left out that, I also, when John Mara told me that I was going to be the interim head coach, he said, and oh, by the way, Eli's the quarterback again. Sure thing, Mr. Mara. Absolutely. For sure. You want me to go tell Eli now, or should you tell him? Please. Oh, my goodness. Boy, how did the Giants get to this point? Really? And I feel bad for Steve Spagnuolo because he's in a situation now where, look, the bet has been made already. It's not his doing. And he already had an audition as a head coach. 3 years with the Rams. You want me to run down those numbers? 1-15, 7-9, 2-14. That ain't getting you in the Hall of Fame. And I don't want to rain on his parade at all, but again, we know that the Giants are going to look elsewhere for their next head coach. How did the succession plan work last time when they took a member of the previous head coach's staff and made him the next head coach? Not too good. Not to mention the fact that this defense has not done anything to where Steve Spagnuolo will probably get serious head coaching consideration with the Giants or any other team in the National Football League. They've been a disgrace. So they save face a little bit. You'll see the number 10, the Eli Manning jerseys out there at MetLife Stadium this week, and, whatever. Right? This Giants season has been a disaster. If they win one more game, they win 2 more games, more power to them. But I think it's to the point with Giant fans now, they probably don't even want him to win any more games. Play for that draft pick. Right? What good is it to finish 4-12 as opposed to 2-14? The season is going to be thought of as a disaster, whether you won 2 games or 4 games. It is a season to forget for the New York Football Giants. Case in point. Like I said, hopefully we'll hear from Eli Manning. He spoke to the media a few moments ago as he gets to start a new streak now as the starting quarterback of the New York Football Giants. 866-ESPN, 866-729-3776. A lot more to get to here till the top of the hour. Dan Graca hanging in for Stephen A. on ESPN Radio.
Guess what? You're in the middle of the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
Damn it, I mean it!
Graca in for Stephen A. We're going till the top of the hour here at 866-ESPN, 866-729-3776. You can tweet at me at Dan Graca, Graca. Let's get back to the busy phones. Jeter in L.A. You're on ESPN Radio. What's up, Jeet? How are you?
I'm doing good. It's a little smoky out here, so I appreciate your thoughts for us out here. It's really bad.
Absolutely. Be safe.
Yeah. Anyway, just 3 points real quick. Number one, congratulations to Herm Edwards. If I had a son that could go play college football, there's no better mentor or a guy with character that I wouldn't want him to play for. Unfortunately, the Giants probably should have hired him, but I'm sure he didn't want the job.
I don't think he was going to get an NFL head coaching job, and especially he had already coached in New York. I think that was a remote possibility.
Yeah. Number two, I'm tired of these Yankee fans. With my last name being Jeter, I'm a big Yankee fan. And I'm a big Joe fan. I was very surprised they let him go. But if you watched him manage the last year, he didn't really look happy. I don't know what's going on in his personal life. Who knows? But, when I've lived and worked in New York City, and it gets to be a grind after a while, so maybe he was a little bit tired. But Aaron Boone is very close to that organization, and this guy knows baseball. So if you look at the Rams coaching staff now, we're seeing a change of the guard where maybe it's a little better to have younger coaches in the game. So that's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, look, they're changing over a new leaf. We know that. Baseball certainly is, I think, as a whole. A little bit different there to compare what happens with baseball and managerial jobs versus the National Football League and the openings there we see at head coach. You can hire a young coach, but it doesn't mean it's going to work. Lane Kiffin wasn't exactly setting the world on fire when he became a head coach with the Raiders, right? And he was a young coach. So I think age is irrelevant. You just got to go out there and have success. And Sean McVay has done a nice job there with the Rams. He really, really has. We were talking about it a little bit earlier, too. There are teams, a handful of teams can technically clinch their divisions, their respective divisions in Week 14, and then you see teams that can wrap up playoff berths this weekend. But the Jaguars, the Rams, these are not traditional powers that we think about in the National Football League, and they've had some lean years of late. And you're seeing the Jaguars and the Rams are going to be, it's reality. They're going to be in the playoffs this year. But that's what the NFL wants. They want that parity aspect. They like it. Clinton's up next. Clinton, you're on ESPN Radio. How are you?
Good, man. Yourself?
Good, Clinton. What's going on?
Not much. A couple of things. You were talking about the Yankees and the problem with Boone, and I'm looking at it and I'm going, Girardi, yeah, he looked frustrated at times, but by the same token, it's like, what more do you expect out of the guy? He got you one game away from the World Series, and you're going to let him go because he didn't get you there? Really? Not that I'm not happy for Aaron Boone, who is really a good guy, but why are you going to let somebody go when they're right there on the cusp of it? And the other thing is, Eli should never have been benched to begin with, because as far as I'm concerned, looking at it, because I'm just a general football fan,
right?
Eli was not the problem. Never was. Yeah, he could throw a couple of lost interceptions, but how else are you going to win? You got to take chances.
You're right about that. And look, has Eli been perfect, or was Eli playing great football? And even you want to even go back to last year when they won 11 games and they made the postseason, right? Eli was not great last year, and I'll tell you what, the offense as a whole was not great. And that was one of the things that stood out to you. Remember, the Giants won 11 games last year on the strength of their defense. Their defense was outstanding. They went out there the previous offseason, spent a bunch of money, brought in guys like Olivier Vernon, Snacks Harrison, and Janoris Jenkins, on and on and on. The defense is what helped them win games. Offensively, they struggled, and that was one of the things that jumped out at you with Ben McAdoo, who was an offensive guy by trade and who'd been on the staff for a couple of years. He becomes the head coach, and the offense took a step back. So that was something that didn't necessarily jive with me, but now that's a thing of the past because we know that it's not going to be Ben McAdoo's offense, not going to be his system moving forward, and, the Giants probably going to have some changes at some key areas, and quarterback could be one of them. And I think it's one of those situations where, for so long you kind of take players for granted. You look at some of these teams, like, the standby always with the NFL is the Browns, right? You look at how many different starting quarterbacks have the Browns had just in the 2000s. What are we up to, like 20 or 30? Just something ridiculous. Giants have had one starting quarterback for the last 12 years, right? Think about having that security, that peace of mind. The most important position in the NFL, maybe the most important position in all of sports, and they've had one guy that you can count on each and every week. That's important. That is important. That's a luxury. And you know what? Giants might be parting with that as soon as the season ends because they might be going in a different direction. Don in Jersey, we'll close out with you. Don, you're on ESPN Radio. How are you?
Hey, man, thanks for taking my call.
What's up, Don?
You think Tom Coughlin's laughing a little bit inside after all this?
I think so. As he's polishing his 2 Super Bowl rings, yeah, I'd say so.
Exactly. And also with Aaron Boone, I see a little George Seifert, Barry Switzer situation there. I mean, he's inheriting not a championship team, but a pretty good one, you know. And I think if he just rides the course, nobody gets injured, there could be some potential good things. And also, do you think like a Brady versus Breeze Super Bowl might be the sexiest matchup?
Well, I think there's a lot of interesting matchups, Don, and I thank you for the phone call. Obviously, you have to say that the Patriots are the prohibitive favorite right now in the AFC, but I think the NFC is still one big jumbled mess. Anybody could come out of it. There's 3 or 4 teams that can emerge. That's going to do it for us today. Great job, everybody chiming in. Thanks to Kat. Thanks to John. We'll catch you next time here on ESPN Radio. So long.
That's just a sample of what you'll hear on the Stephen A. Smith Show. Weekdays at 1 p.m. Eastern on Sirius XM Channel 80 and the ESPN app.